gentlemen, for over a decade, my next guest was an undercover detective for the New York Police Department, and now she's written a novel based on those experiences called Lady Gold. Please welcome Angela Amato. Now, I have to admit, I've always been fascinated with police work. I'm one of those kind of people. I'm always chatting up policemen and detectives, trying to find out stories about what they do. And you actually had a pretty unusual experience your first day ever on the job. Is that right?
Yes.
This is on the job as an undercover detective.
No, actually, the first day I was on 42nd Street in uniform. I had volunteered for that assignment. I thought if I can work 42nd Street, when 42nd Street was 42nd Street, which it is no longer, thank God.
Pre-Disney World.
Right, which was, exactly, which was like in the early 80s. And there I'm walking my post. I had a foot post in uniform, 7th to 8th Avenue. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm walking there in my uniform, think I'm looking good, and a radio car pulls up next to me, and the cops are laughing. So I walk over and I look in. I say, "Excuse me, officer, what's so funny?" And they point behind me. And I look behind me, and it's my mother and father. They're shadowing me walking down the street. Okay, now...
What? Because they're worried about you?
They were worried about their little girl. You know, they're from Brooklyn. They had never been to 42nd. They're shadowing me. Okay, now humiliation. Now I go back to the precinct, and of course, this was a running gag for the next year. You got your milk money, Officer Amato? You got your mittens, Officer Amato?
I would love it, though, if you did get into some kind of scrape and your parents swung into action. Beatrice, we got a 9/11. Let's move. Crack, twang. You know what's fascinating? You worked, and I've always wondered about this, and tell me if I'm getting too crass, but you worked undercover as a prostitute. And I'm always curious, okay, well, how does that work exactly? I mean, at what point do you have to sort of draw the line and okay...
I just don't go up to that point of any kind of intercourse. I use my mouth, in other words, to talk. Talking. I mean talking. Talking to people. Talking. So it's never anything sexual. It's only talking. And so...
The president says using your mouth isn't sexual. So... You might be in the clear here. There's a good precedent for this. So wait, so what do you mean you keep them talking? I mean, what kind of operation was this? Because you went undercover. There was an operation here in New York.
Right. It was a number of years ago. I had started my own investigation because I had read an ad in the Village Voice for sex surrogates. And I said, what the heck is this sex surrogates? And where you can get reimbursed from your insurance companies. And so I said, what the heck is this?
So they're sort of trying to pretend that this sex is for medical purposes.
Exactly.
I did my own investigation into this. And it's true, yeah.
And I got a job, went to my captain, he said, great, go with it. And I got a job as a sex surrogate, and I went in, and these men would come in, I'd be in a nurse's outfit, we'd go into an examination room, but actually they thought they were there to have sex. And then ultimately the doctor, whom I locked up, would sign off on the forms so that these guys could get reimbursed from their insurance company.
So this would be on their Blue Cross Blue Shield?
Yeah, as anxiety disorders. So these guys were coming in 2 or 3 times a week to get serviced, and they were getting reimbursed for the service.
Is this legal anywhere? I mean, it's not legal in New York, but is there any state I can go to and take care of my anxieties, if you know what I mean?
Possibly California, I don't know.
Okay. Good guess. You've been mugged over 100 times.
Yes.
It was actually almost part of your job for a while. Is that right?
Yeah, I did that on 43rd Street and 8th Avenue for a good part. Again, we're talking about the early 80s when 43rd Street across from Show World, when it was operating.
I know that area well, yeah.
And I would set up on the phone, what we call set up, and the only person I could call really at that time at night, because it'd usually be late at night, 12, 1 o'clock, would be my mom.
So your job was to stay on the phone and wait to get mugged.
Right,
yeah.
for somebody to take me off. So I'd be calling my mother. Who else do you call at that time? I say, Ma, listen, if we get disconnected or if you hear screams, don't worry about it because it means it went down and I'll call you later. So my poor mother would all...
Wait a minute. What do you mean, don't worry about it? Don't worry if you hear screams. It just means I'm being mugged by a stranger.
Right.
There were other people there who run in and...
Right, and would collar the guy and stuff.
Your parents. Your father at that point. Yeah.
Right. And what I would end up doing is my mother would hear these scream and a scuffle. Stop, wait, hot. And they'd hang up, I'd hang up the phone. And then hours later, sometimes I'd forget to call her. We'd process the guy and stuff, and I wouldn't get to call her for a few hours later. And my poor mother would be by the phone. And, of course, it'd grate up her hair and stuff. But
I would think so, to hear screaming and everything.
Yes.
Now, I'm curious. Talk about TV shows for a second. There are a lot of TV shows that deal with police work.
Right.
What do you think is the most realistic, from your experience? Because you'd know. What's the most realistic of all the TV shows about cops?
Barney Miller, and that's from years ago.
Barney Miller is a comedy show. What are you talking about?
Because cops have to deal with all this negative stuff all the time. And they're able to take the negative stuff and put a spin on it to make it laughable. And so I worked with, not like with people like with Wojo and Harris and stuff.
Right.
I had Johnny Alphabet. I had Fredo. We gave all different. I had Bottlehead. We had our own.
Wait a minute. Who's Bottlehead?